Welcome back to the channel. Today, Vitoria. So, apologies for being absent for a while, and you can see temporary accommodation here. I'm out of here on Monday, heading back home on Monday, so it'll be more constant then. It's just on the road, it's a little bit tricky. So I've sat down and watched Sharp's Honor to do one of my Sharp's companion videos, and I figured I would also do another Forlorn Hope video. Forlorn Hope's got a song called Vitoria, and Sharp's Honor ends with the Battle of Vitoria. So I'll talk about the Forlorn Hope song today, and then the Sharp's Honor will come out sometime in the next week or so. So let's get started. Forlorn Hope, for those who don't know, is this sort of small metal band that's all metal rock sort of thing. Came out, I believe, last year, end of last year. Very good band. They do Peninsular War Napoleonic music, which is quite interesting. It's really good, actually. I like the band a lot. Big fan. I knew about them just before they came out, and so I was looking at their album when it was coming out, like, oh, that would be cool, that'd be cool. So I've already done 5 videos, I believe, on the songs they've done, so you can check those out in the playlist. Vitoria. So 1812, Wellington wins the Battle of Salamanca. There's another Battle of Salamanca which I'm going to actually talk about. I'm not going to talk about the Wellington one. I'm going to talk about the in a future video, the brutal street fighting partisan one. That's quite interesting. But Sir Arthur Wellington wins the Battle of Salamanca, advances north with his army in 1812. Unfortunately, the French forms a pincer-type move to come get him, and he retreats back through Salamanca, back past Ciudad Rodrigo, back to basically the Portuguese border. So people think of the Peninsular Campaign as, well, the Peninsular War, as like this force of Wellington pushing forward. And what it really is pushing forward and then going back to Portugal, and then going back, and then going back to Portugal. I think he does this twice. He goes back, and the third time's the charm. So remember, going back to Portugal meant down to the Terra Verdes, the big chain near the bottom of Lisbon. Big chain of forts there. So it was by no means a smooth sail through Portugal. Vitoria itself, Jourdan is in command at Vitoria. He's actually sick. He's a bad fever for a couple of days, so the column is halted in the town of Vitoria. The wagon train is halted there. So after Salamanca, the French had basically decided to pull out of Spain. That included all of King Ferdinand VII, His Most Catholic Majesty King Ferdinand VII was a Spanish king, and Napoleon's brother. There, I cannot remember that name. Sorry, Napoleon's brother has basically taken the royal treasury and bought it out. It's worth about £1 million, so about £120 million today worth of loot, and it's sitting in these wagon trains in Vitoria. Jourdan is sick. He's basically just told everyone just to halt while he gets better. Wellington, meanwhile, has divided his army into 4 columns, and these columns are sort of coming in. One of them's taking the road at Bilbao up north there to try and cut them off from the north. And there's another column coming in. We'll get into that during the song, but yeah, there's essentially 4 separate columns. Pictum's division breaks the line by rushing across a bridge, losing 1,800 men. And we'll talk about what happens at Vitoria in the song. So I just want to give a brief overview. Basically, you've got a flanking column, column on the right, column in the left center, and then right center. And the French are just sort of scattered. Jourdan's very worried about his left, so he won't take troops to protect his right. And then when he sees the flankers, he panics, which is never good. The songs always have quite good intros. They're very good. They'd be very good for radio. These disc jockeys could hit the post, and they call it, and you talk just until the first words. I don't know how to do that.
And so it's come to this. The French have made a stand. The time has finally come to drive them out of Spanish
French hadn't really made a stand as much as they'd just sort of been caught. But yeah, you could say they'd made a stand. They didn't immediately surrender and start running away. But 80,000 Allied forces, 50,000 Brits, rest sort of Portuguese and Spanish, and then sort of 60,000 French.
Resistance will be fierce. Attack them on four fronts.
Four columns.
The blood of every man is where the battle's lost or won. The road has been long. There's a long road to come. We've come through the fire now. The end has begun.
The road has been long. Remember the Napoleonic Wars? For me, they started in 1805 when Napoleon becomes emperor. But technically, they've started in 1793, 1794. These things have been going on for a decade, multiple decades by this point. If we take 1793, they've been going on for 20 years. If we think of things like the 30 Years' War or stuff like that, we think of NAM. NAM was, 10 years? Russians in Afghanistan was 10, World War II was 6, World War I was 5. 4 or 5, you know what I mean, like 14 counts technically, but it's only the last half, but the last 4 months. Anyway, 20 years. Most of the guys some of the guys in this army wouldn't be even 20 years old. So just think of that, like that's a long time. The peninsula's been going since 1807, so that's 6 years. So for as long as World War II was going on, the British have been in the peninsula fighting, whether that was against the Spanish or with they've always been allied with the Portuguese, obviously, but against the Spanish and French allies. It's been a long time. You think of all of World War II, that's how long Wellington was in the peninsula. Wellington himself and a bunch of these guys might have been fighting in India before that. They could have been in the West Indies on deployment. It's a big thing. It's up north in Denmark where they bombarded Copenhagen. Was it Flanders campaign? That these guys have been fighting for a long time. The Napoleonic Wars is a very active time, not just for the British, but the British often get this rap of sort of like paying other people, and they won the war through gold. The British were sending troops all over the world. So yes, it's come to this. We're 1 year away from Napoleon's abdication, and we're 2 years away from the final end of the Napoleons. Of this lot of Napoleons as emperor. Of course, Napoleon III would pop his head up later. And the Germans would kick it back in again. Pretending the French would, the Germans had a good part of that. River Heights. The battle's basically fought over this big river with a nice hairpin in it. And that's where Picton breaks through. The French had 151 guns, which is 150 guns, and the reason we know that is because they left every one of them sitting behind because they bolted when this all went south. The French just bolted. So, 150 guns. Picton estimates that when his 3rd Division made that big spearhead through the French line, that 50 guns were targeted on him, and he got attacked in the flank because he was obviously spearheading. Remember, salients work both ways. So as you're pushing through the enemy line, they're flanking you. So yes, Picton's division copped a hiding. 1,800 men dead or wounded. That's 2 battalions worth of men dead or wounded, which is a lot. Although in a division, it's not a crippling number. But so 150 guns because the French left them behind. That's Picton. So remember, the Allied army now has to march over the Pyrenees, fight the Battle of Toulouse, march north. As far as they know, they're going to have to fight like some sort of death battle in Paris. But the Allied army of Wellington doesn't have to go that far. The Eastern Allies, the Austrians and the Russians and the Prussians are... And that's the Battle of Vitoria is most famous for, is the British fell upon that wagon train and looted the absolute crap out of it. I mean, you cannot imagine the amount of stuff they stole. They stole a kingdom's worth of jewelry. They stole King Joseph was the king of Spain. Sorry, I remembered. Joseph, Napoleon's brother, he had all of his loot, and it was all gone. I think like 2 or 3 wagons might have left the night before. They took everything. And when I say they, I don't mean the British Army took everything. I mean like Private Jones and Sergeant Wilmer or whatever took everything. Privates walked away with crown jewels, literal crown jewels, stuffed in their shakos. And the 18th Hussars got a hiding for this. Wellington said they weren't even fit to be sold or something. Like, I should take their horses and flog the men all the way back to England because of their behaviour when they fell upon the wagon train, basically first, because they had horses, obviously. And they just fell upon this thing and looted the absolute crap out of it. I would love to go to Vitoria with a metal detector and see what was left behind, but I imagine it's already been taken care of. But that's the real highlight of Vitoria. From a military history point of view, it's 5,000 French dead or wounded, plus another 2,600 captured, 5,000 British dead or wounded. British and Allies. It's not a bloody battle, but the entire Spanish crown is just yoink, just take it. Wellington is absolutely furious. This is where he gets another one of his scum of the earth quotes, where he basically says something along the lines of, these men are just beasts, and they're just looting at every chance they get. They're the absolute scum of the earth. Something along those lines. I'll find it later and put it in the description or something. So yes, the Vitoria is all about that wagon train that the British don't really know is there, and as soon as they find it, that's just boom, it's like honey to these guys. Most of them probably would have drunk it all or gambled it away. But, yeah, very, very big deal. So 70,000 guys. Say 70,000 guys because the artillery obviously wouldn't be involved. 70,000 guys splitting £1 million. That's a lot, you know. £100 each, easy. That's 5 years' wages for a labourer at this time. So in Australia, that'd be the equivalent of $300,000 or $400,000. In America, maybe $200,000-300,000 in an afternoon. That's cool. I think it's one of the Sharps, it's books or movies, I can't remember, where it says, "I'll line the streets with Provost," and that's based on an actual quote that Wellington had, where basically it's like, "I'll line the streets with Provost and just hang any man who steps out of file," because Bannerhov was the one where the British started just raping people, just flat out raping Spanish civilians. It was awful. Ciudad Rodrigo was quite bad as well. Salamanca. That basically, as soon as the British army loots a town, it just turns into like a mindless frenzy and just starts killing and raping civilians. And then this Vitoria thing happens, and Wellington's just panicking, like, I'm going to take these guys into France, not war-torn Spain, not Spain that's known nothing but war, and people are very not used to it, but sort of adapted to how awful it is, to France, where there hasn't been much war. And we're going to France, and we're going to pillage Toulouse, are we? We're going to do that. But we'll talk about that later. So that was Vitoria by Forlorn Hope. Hope you stick around on the channel. Hit subscribe and it'll tell you when I have a new video up. The next video I'm going to do is going to be Sharp's Honor. I'm going to review the TV show because it's easier, and then compare that to the book. The differences, the similarities. There's a big difference in Sharp's Honor in the book in that the woman is actually an acquaintance of Sharp's, and a known French spy was in the TV show. It's completely different. So yes, that ends in the Battle of Vitoria. Sharp actually gets Prince Joseph's telescope, which is... Anyway, we'll go into that into the actual TV show. So thank you very much for watching, and have a wonderful day.